إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات آمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. My dear respected brothers and sisters, today's topic, inshallah, is going to be about sacrifice. And in particular, what sacrifice am I talking about? For this deen to become present for today, the deen that we live today, for Islam to come about, we spoke about a few weeks ago about the origins of Islam. How Islam came about, the trials and tribulations of the Anbiya before us, and the people that came before us. And not just the Anbiya, the Sahaba, the people that were surrounded by these prophets. And we understood how many sacrifices they needed to take for the deen to be the way it is today. And so we know they all came with the same message: follow the one true God and follow the messenger at the time. But all of them at the same time had to have many sacrifices. Whether that be in the personal life or the social life, whatever it may be. And there's always sacrifices along the way, and today it is no different. The sunnah never changes. There will be sacrifices today. If you want to really implement your deen, there will have to be sacrifices along the way. And we look at society today, we look at the Islam today, and some of us may be thinking, a lot of us are struggling perhaps in terms of our iman, our faith, and other factors and other things. But we have to be real with ourselves. We have to take accountability. Why are we really struggling? It's because our level of sacrifice is at an all-time low. It is not something that we are proud to be, proud to say, I should say. We think about the level of sacrifice we do, we're not really up there, I guess you could say. And in reality, we give Allah trash. Let's be honest, we give Allah trash when it comes to sacrifices. When it comes to giving Allah, even when we give to charity, we give the stuff that doesn't really burn the heart. It doesn't burn the pockets, as they say. We give stuff that is excess. I don't need this £1, £2, I need this £5. May Allah, of course, reward you. But we don't really give when it burns to give. That maybe that £20 that you're thinking, I need it for something else, and you want to buy something else, when you give it for the sake of Allah, that is a sacrifice, an example of sacrifice. And so when we give to Allah, we have to be honest with ourselves. We don't give Allah the best of things. And in return, what do we ask Allah for? We ask Allah for Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, give me Jannatul Firdaus. I give Allah scraps. And in return, what do I want? I want Jannatul Firdaus. This shouldn't be the case, my brothers and sisters. We should be giving Allah more and more for the sake of Allah, and then also ask Allah as well. So Allah wants to be beloved to you more than anything else. More than anything else in this dunya, He wants to be more beloved to you than anything else. And imagine that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now, He has sent down Surah Tawbah. And this surah, He sent it down with so much anger that He didn't even stop the Bismillah. Right? This is the only chapter in the Quran where Allah did not send it down with the Bismillah. That's how much anger He sent down Surah Tawbah. And so now imagine, listen to the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's speaking to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And listen to the language. Listen to the language of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the language Allah uses, right? Who is He saying this to? He is saying this to the greatest ummah to ever walk the earth. Their loyalty was, unscathed. Allah is speaking to these people in this language. The greatest ummah to ever walk the earth, the Sahaba. And this is the language of Allah to them. And to be honest, when you actually think about it, it's got to be arguably one of the most harshest verses in the Quran. One of the most harshest verses in the Quran. And He says to Muhammad, He says, قُلْ يَا Muhammad, He says, tell them, O Muhammad, tell Umar, tell Abu Bakr, tell all these men, tell the greatest ummah to ever walk the earth. قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاءُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاءُكُمْ وَأَخْوَانُكُمْ وَأَزْوَاجُكُمْ وَعَشِيرَتُكُمْ وَأَمْوَالٌ اقْتَرَفْتُمُوهَا وَتِجَارَةٌ تَخْشَوْنَ كَسَادَهَا وَمَسَاكِنُ تَرْضَوْنَهَا. He says to them, tell all of these men, tell those men who have given their lives in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tell them that if their fathers, their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their wives, their kids, their families, their businesses, their money, their cars, everything on this dunya that they own, if all of these things are more beloved to them than Allah and His Rasul, He says, أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيل الله وجهادا في سبيله فتربصوا حتى تأتي الله بأمره والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. Tell these men, if any of these things are more beloved to them than fighting in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Nabi, then tell them the punishment of Allah is waiting for them. The punishment of Allah is waiting for them. So that if any of these things are more beloved to you than Allah and His Nabi, then understand the punishment of Allah is waiting for you. And this is the language of Allah to the greatest ummah to ever walk the earth. So what is the language to Allah? What is the language of Allah to people like you and I? So sacrifices needed to be made. And Allah also says in the Quran, He says, لا تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون. You will never attain that level of birr. And birr is a level of iman that you have to reach. Right? He says you will never attain that level of birr, that level of faith, up until you give up that which you love the most. Up until you give up that which you love the most, you will never attain that level of iman. Again, Allah wants to be beloved to you more than anything else. And so, the reason we are struggling, again, is our level of sacrifice. How much sacrifice are you doing in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And so now, how does Allah test you? How does Allah see this level of sacrifice? How does Allah test your mahabbah for Him? He puts you in situations where now you need to make a choice. Am I going to pick Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or am I going to pick the dunya? Am I going to pick Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or am I going to pick my wife? Am I going to pick Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or am I going to pick my friends? Allah puts you in these situations. So now you need to make a choice to test you. Which one of you is the best in your belief? Which one of you is going to sacrifice in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So one of the best examples I can give is of a Sahabi who goes by the name of Suhaib al-Rumi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And this Sahabi, he was originally from Rome. And he came to Mecca before Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was a prophet. And so he came to Mecca, and I really want you to live this hadith with me. Imagine now, with this young Sahabi, you come to Mecca before the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam received revelation. He's now in Mecca, and imagine now, his deen comes later on. So originally now, he's not a Muslim, because the deen has not come about, right? And I want you to really relate this to your life, and the level of sacrifice you have in your life. And he comes as a slave to Mecca now. He's in Mecca and he comes as a slave. And now imagine he's worked his way up to the point where he's able to free himself, and then he becomes a Muslim in secret. So he's a slave, he works his way up to now free himself, and then now he becomes a Muslim in secret. And at the time, things in Mecca became very tough. They became very tough. So when Allah revealed and said to the Muslims that now you need to make that migration to Medina, right? What happened then? The Muslims are now leaving now. The Muslims are leaving. And those that were openly Muslim, what happened with them? They had no choice but to leave. They had no choice but to leave from Mecca to Medina. So those that were openly Muslim, they had to go. But what about for people like Suhaib al-Rumi, who are in secret they were Muslim? What about these people? He's probably thinking, now look, I'm from Mecca, I'm Muslim in secret, I'm one of the wealthy ones, and now Rasulullah and his companions have left. What do I do now? What a predicament he is in. And a lot of us think that the migration from Mecca to Medina, that's where it ended. And remember how I mentioned that the Sunnah never changes. Where if you really want to, if it's time to become tough, let's say in the UK, you have to make that migration. Understand the Sunnah never changes. You have to make that migration to elsewhere, maybe another city, maybe another country. The Sunnah never changes, even in the 21st century. And so now, what does Suhaib al-Rumi do in this predicament? He gathers all of his wealth and he buries his wealth away somewhere. And now he's preparing himself to leave at night time, to leave in secret. He's fleeing now, and he's going to Medina in secret. And imagine now he's buried all of his wealth and he's on the outskirts of Mecca now. He's nearly left. And he's ambushed by a battalion of 25 Meccans that were non-believers. And so now imagine now they're surrounding him. And these are the stories of your fathers. These are the people that you will meet in Jummah, inshallah ta'ala. Right? These are the stories of the people, our fathers. Right? And sometimes when I think about it, I think, look at the sacrifices that they made, and look at the sacrifices that we are making. He's buried all of his wealth now. He was a slave at one point. He's gathered so much, he's accumulated so much wealth. He's buried it away. He's leaving, he's on the outskirts, and now he's ambushed by 25 Meccans. And now listen to the conversation between Suhaib and these non-believers. And they say to him, where are you going? And of course now, they're running him up, they're making a joke of him. They're saying, where are you going? As if they didn't know where he's going. Of course they knew where he was going. And so he holds his hands up and he says, I've been caught red-handed. And so he pulls a cut out of land, more or less, and he says, I'm going to the Prophet of Allah. And look what they say to him. They say, oh Suhaib, do you think we are going to let you go to Muhammad just like that? Do you think we're going to let you go? And now look what they do. Look what they do to him. You know how people start reminding you of favors that they did for you? Look what they do to him now. They say, oh Suhaib, didn't you come to us as a slave? And he says, yes, I came to you as a slave. Didn't we allow you to work amongst us until you were able to free yourself as a slave? And he says, yes. He says, didn't we allow you to trade in our markets and buy and sell until you became the wealthiest amongst us, O Suhaib? Didn't we allow you to do that? And he says, yes. He says, do you think we will allow you to take our money with you? And what is the response of Suhaib? Imagine now one man speaking to a battalion of 25 people. And look what he says. Look at the bravery of Suhaib al-Rumi. Look what he says. He says, I will give you an ultimatum. 1 against 25, and he says, I will give you an ultimatum. He says, I will tell you where I buried all of my wealth. And again, listen to it. I'll tell you where I buried all of my wealth. Not 10%, 20%. All of my wealth. I will tell you where I buried all of it. And you can take all of that wealth and let me go. And they say, okay, what's the other option? He says, I have a bag of arrows on my back. And Suhaib was a very good archer at the time. He was a very good archer. And he says, I have a bag of arrows on my back, and I will continue to shoot arrow after arrow, and you will fall men after men, until there is no arrows left. And then I will withdraw my sword and kill every single one of you. And so they say, okay, no, Suhaib, tell us where the money is and we will let you go. And so now imagine, he's made this transaction now, in secret, in the dark, on the outskirts of Mecca, where no one knows about it apart from the 25 Meccans and Suhaib. And so now he's going to the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when he's just about to reach, the Prophet of Allah runs to him. And he says to him, oh Suhaib, what a successful transaction you made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So naturally, he's going to be thinking, this was in discreet, this was in the dark, no one knew about this. How did the Prophet of Allah come to know about this? Who do you think revealed it to him? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was so happy with that transaction that He revealed it to the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah was so pleased, and He revealed it to the Prophet of Allah to teach this ummah that this deen didn't come for free. That this deen, sacrifices needed to be made in order to establish the deen. Just like Suhaib al-Rumi did. And sacrifices need to be made to taste the sweetness of Iman. So understand, take the example of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Astaghfirullah. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulullah. So my brothers and sisters, especially the younger ones, I mentioned how, we're trying to sort of make like a sort of series where, because the kids are on holiday, trying to make it more relevant to them and they understand, the origins of the deen. We spoke about the Fatiha, we spoke about, the origins of Islam, the Anbiya, how they came about. And today we are speaking about sacrifices and how it's important even for the youngsters to be making sacrifices. And so perhaps many of you are thinking, especially the young believers, I've got a lot of friends and a lot of them are having fun, doing perhaps things that are against Islam, whether it be, chilling in the wrong areas, smoking, drinking, whatever it may be, right? And for the young believers, it's important that we educate them with what? that they should not be hanging around these types of people that are going to take you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are not the type of people that we want to associate with. And a lot of them may be thinking that, I'm missing out on something, I'm missing out on fun. I'm missing out on the good things that, they look like they're having so much fun. But what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? If there's one person that you trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because every human being can buckle and break. Every human being, if you put your trust in them, eventually they will break your trust. Right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you put your yaqeen and trust in Him, He will never ever break your trust. He will never ever let you down. And so what does Allah say in the Quran? He says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي, whosoever stays away from my remembrance, whosoever stays away from my masjid, whosoever stays away from my Quran, from the prophets, from the message, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, for him is a miserable, wretched life. So do not think you are missing out on something if they are going against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah speaks the haqq. Yeah, they may be having fun at the time. Yeah, they may be they may be smiling, joking, whatever it may be. But you don't know what is going on in their heart. You don't know what is happening. Do they have peace in their heart? You don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You are not missing out on anything. And so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for these people, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, for them is a miserable life. Who is the real friend? For the young brothers and sisters especially. Who are your real friends? The real friend is the one that calls you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that calls you towards good, forbids you from evil. For example, maybe you're going to play football, and they hear the adhan, they say, brothers, let's stop and let's pray on namaz, and then let's continue. Those are your real friends. Those are your real brothers. The real friend is the one that when you're out, they say, there's a masjid here, let's go and pray. The real friend is the one that calls you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is constantly aware of every single action you do, and has that, that awareness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking. That is the real friend. Not the ones that are dragging you to these places of filth. And they will help you improve your deen too. You want to be around brothers and sisters like that. That want success in the dunya, but also the akhirah. And you want to have that peace in your heart. And these are the friends that you want. And imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and He's describing the people on that day where there's no shade except the shade of Allah. Right? On that day that's 50,000 years long. He's now telling us what are going to be the expressions of the people on that day. And these are real expressions from the Quran. On the day of judgment where people will be saying these things, real expressions in the Quran. He says, وَيَوْمَ يَعِضُّ الظَّالِمُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي اتَّخَذْتُ مَعَ الرَّسُولِ سَبِيلًا. And beware of the day where the wrongdoer will bite on his nails. Real expressions, they will bite on their nails in regret. And they will say, oh, I wish I had followed the way of the messenger. They will bite on their nails. So they will say, يَا وَيْلَتَى لَيْتَنِي لَمْ أَتَّخِذْ فُلَانًا خَلِيلًا. Woe to me, I wish I had never taken so-and-so as a friend. I wish I had never taken this person as a friend. They led me away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لَقَدْ أَضَلَّنِي عَنِ الذِّكْرِ بَعْدَ إِذْ جَاءَنِي. It was Him who took me astray. He took me astray when remembrance had came to me, when the reminder had reached me, when the message had reached me. He took me away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ لِلْإِنسَانِ خَذُولًا. And shaitan has always betrayed humanity. So do not make friends where on the day of judgment you will regret that. You will regret, you will bite on your nails. Real expressions in the Quran. Allah then says in Surah Fajr, He says, وَجِيءَ يَوْمَئِذٍ بِجَهَنَّمَ. And hell is brought forth on that day. And what will the people think? What will they say? They will say, يَوْمَئِذٍ يَتَذَكَّرُ الْإِنسَانُ وَأَنَّى لَهُ الذِّكْرَى. And this is, when hell is brought forth on that day, this is when every disbelieving person will remember their own sins. They will remember all of their sins. They will remember the friends they used to hang out with that was wrong for them. The sacrifices that perhaps they didn't make. Maybe they didn't want to miss out on some fun. So-called fun. And on that day they will remember these sins. But look at the way Allah ends the verse. He says, what is the use of them remembering at that time? What is the use of them remembering on the day of judgment that time? What is the use of it now? Do not be one of those people who will say one of these expressions. So Allah wants good for you. Hence why He has asked you to make these sacrifices. Because you will attain the peace in this dunya and the goodness in the hereafter. Abu Musa reported that the Prophet ﷺ said that verily the parable of good and bad company is that of a seller of musk and a blacksmith. That the seller of musk, the person who's selling the perfume and whatnot, the more you stay around him, the more goodness that you have around him, you will start to smell good smells. But if you are the one that, as for the blacksmith, he will burn your clothes the more you are around him, and you will notice a bad smell. This is the advice of our Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Be around those who have nur around them, lightness around them, right? Not those who are like the blacksmith who will burn your clothes. And so, all of these sacrifices, what does it lead up to? What does it lead up to? What really are we striving for? What does Jannah hold for those who sacrifice? What does Jannah hold for Sahabis like Suhaib al-Rumi, like we spoke about? What does Allah hold for them? It is an eternal paradise. An eternal paradise. And so now, Imam Ahmad, imagine he is speaking and he says, when people ask him, when do we feel comfort? When is the first time that we feel comfort when we go to Jannah? And he says, when that first leg is put into Jannah, it will not want to walk back again. When that first leg is put to Jannah. And nowadays, like I said, the amount of sacrifice, your deen will be better. And so Allah wants to test us in our faith. He says, لِيَبْلُوكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, to test you in which one of you is the best in belief. The best in belief. And so, what is the reward for those who sacrifice? What is in that Jannah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes? He says, in dunya, the wine and the stuff that we sacrifice and whatnot, it gives you a headache. You lose your mind. But in Jannah, what will it be like? It will be white and delicious to the drinkers. No headache will they experience, and nor will they be intoxicated. And it will be rivers of wine. أنهار من خمر, rivers of wine. وفاكهة مما يتخيرون, and fruits of what they select. ولحم طير مما يشتهون, and meat of fowl and whatever they desire. وحور عين, and beautiful women. كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون, the likenesses of pearls well protected. جزاء بما كانوا يعملون, and this is the rewards for those that used to believe, for what they used to do. And on that day, when you enter Jannah, what will you be greeted with? إِلَّا قِيلًا سَلَامًا سَلَامًا, greetings on that day will be peace, peace. And you will experience that eternal Jannah, inshallah ta'ala. We ask Allah to allow us to enter this Jannah of His. But what about for the people that did not want to make sacrifices? That did not want to go, those expressions in the Quran, that will say these expressions. What will be waiting for them? تَغَيْبًا وَكَثِيرًا, the fire will be furious and roaring. سَمِعُوا لَهَا شَهِيقًا وَهِيَ تُفُورٌ, and they will hear a dreadful inhaling while it boils up. But in Jannah, what will the people of Jannah hear? لَا يَسْمَعُونَ حَسِيسَهَا, they will not hear this. وَهُمْ فِي مَشْتَهَتْ أَنفُسُهُمْ خَالِدُونَ, and they will hear the sounds of whatever their hearts desire. So understand, we spoke about the levels of sacrifice, and this can be linked to the friends we make as well. And understand, you are not missing out on anything that is deemed to be fun, because we know وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, they will have a miserable life if they are away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we ask Allah to allow us to make friends that are good for us. Just the last of the khutbah, I would like to mention a few reminders as well, in terms of the volunteering again. Of course, we need 2 guards to be volunteering every single Jummah, and we will be making a rota as well. So once a month, inshallah, if you can, volunteer to become the guard for the Jummah prayer, and inshallah Allah will reward you as well. Also, in your donations as well, please be kareem, because there's a new door that's been set up by the people that own this place. We've had to contribute to it as well, and so please be kareem in your donations. We've also purchased new speakers and new amplifiers as well, so we need funds for that. So as a community, support your community, support the local Jummah, and please be kareem in your donations. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to leave this place of Yawm al-Jummah forgiven all of our sins. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove the oppression from our Palestinian brothers and sisters. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to have the ability to make sacrifices in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد واقم الصلاه